This is Fitness Blender's light toning and flexibility routine. In this workout, we're going to be going through 13 different stretching exercises for 30 seconds each. We're only going to be going through one round, and we're not going to need any equipment except for an optional exercise mat. With that said, let's go ahead and get started with our first exercise. Starting off with a crossover hamstring stretch. Kick that right leg over top of your left, keeping that left leg nice and straight, stretching those hands down to the ground as close as is comfortable. That upper body and torso should remain relatively relaxed. That right leg should be putting pressure on the ground, but not locked out. You want to keep that right leg bent. That left leg should be completely straight, locked out, and should be carrying about 75 to about 85% of your body weight. Hold it for just a little bit longer. And go ahead and switch sides so that left leg's going to come over top of that right. That right leg's going to stay straight. Left leg can bend a little bit if you need to. Tip that torso over forward. Remember that upper body and that torso should be relatively relaxed. Just make sure that right leg stays straight this time. Now I've got just about 10 seconds left. Keep those lungs open, breathing normally. Just make sure you're not holding your breath. Again, check that right leg. Make sure you're keeping that right leg straight. And go ahead and let it relax. We're going to switch off to the next one, which is going to be a flat back hamstring stretch. So those legs are going to go nice and straight. Keep that back perfectly flat and hinge from that hip only. Go as far as you can until you feel that lower back start to round. You want to make sure that that back stays perfectly flat to just isolate those hamstrings rather than stretching that lower back. Again, keep those lungs open, breathing normally. Make sure you don't hold that breath. Almost done. And go ahead and let it relax. Go and stand back up. We're going to do a hip flexor lunge plus an ab stretch. So that left leg is going to go forward, bend that knee, right leg stays straight. Lean back, trying to press that right hip down. Get a good stretch to the front of that hip flexor and those abdominal muscles as you lean that torso back. Just go back as far as is comfortable. Hold it there, and remember, keep those lungs open, breathing normally, keeping everything really nice and solid. Just a few seconds left, and I'm going to switch sides. And go ahead and switch. Bring that right leg forward, that left leg goes back. Again, that right knee is going to bend, that left leg's going to stay nice and straight. Lean back with that torso. You should feel a stretch to the front of that hip on your left side and those abdominal muscles. Just keep leaning back as far as is comfortable, trying to get a really good stretch while still keeping those lungs open, pushing that range of motion as much as possible, but make sure you don't feel any pain. You want to feel a little bit of a stretch, but you shouldn't feel any pain. Now we've got just a few more seconds to go, so hold it for just a little bit longer. And go ahead and switch it. Let's move on to our next one. Get those feet really nice and wide for the wide hamstring and back stretch. So you want those feet about 2 to 3 times shoulder width apart. Drop down in between those legs, trying to get those elbows as close to the ground as you can, but make sure those legs stay straight. You don't want those knees bend. You want to try to get a good stretch on those hamstrings. There should be a little bit different part of that leg. Should feel it quite a bit different part of that leg than a regular toe touch. So just keep that stretch going. Don't bounce. Just hold it. Keep those lungs open. We've got just a few seconds left. And let's go ahead and let that relax. Let's move on to our next one, which is going to be an inside thigh stretch plus an oblique stretch. So lunging off to one side, you're going to bend back towards your straight leg, dropping the hip of that straight leg as much as you can to get a good stretch on the inside of that thigh. And then you're going to tip that torso over, trying to get a good stretch on the outside of that oblique. Again, just hold it. Keep those lungs open. Don't bounce. Just want to keep a constant stretch on it, trying to push that range of motion just a tiny bit more the entire time. And go ahead and let that relax. We're going to switch over to the other side. So switch those feet. That opposite knee comes out to the side. Lean back towards that straight leg again, dropping that hip. Leaning away from that bent knee with that torso, trying to get a good stretch on that oblique. Again, just keep those lungs open. Hold that stretch nice and steady. Constantly trying to push into that range of motion just a little bit more. Make sure you don't bounce. Few seconds left. Hold it just a little bit longer. And go ahead and let it relax. All right, let's move on to our next one, which is going to be a downward facing dog. So walk those hands out away from you. facing straight down towards the ground, pressing that chest down towards your feet, keeping those legs nice and straight, shoving those heels down to the ground. You want those feet just about shoulder width apart, hands about shoulder width apart. Just keep pressing down. You want to try to keep a nice straight line from your ankle up to your hip and from your hip to your wrist. Just a nice straight line through that torso, from that arm to that torso, and through those legs. Hold it just a little bit longer, keeping those lungs open. And go ahead and let it relax. We're going to move into a calf stretch. So in a plank position, you're going to shove your heel down on that left side first. Your right leg's going to be up off the ground. You can hook it behind your leg like Kelly's doing here, or you can just keep it moved out of the way so it's not engaged. Mainly just trying to put all your weight into that left leg. Pushing back with those hands, trying to get a really good stretch on that calf. And we're almost done with this one. We're going to switch sides here in just a second. And go ahead and switch those legs. So drop that right foot down to the ground. That left leg comes up. Make sure you're pressing that heel down to the ground as tight as you possibly can. You can kind of kick those hips up a little bit if you need to, if you can get a little bit more press on that calf. But try to really push with those hands to kind of shove that entire body back, pressing that heel down to the ground, getting a really good stretch on that calf. Just keep holding it. Keep those lungs open. Making sure you've got a really nice solid stance, constantly trying to push that range of motion. And go ahead and let it relax. All right, let's go and move on to the next stretch, which is going to be a cat stretch. So on those hands and knees, those hands directly underneath those shoulders, those knees directly underneath those hip joints. Just alternate back and forth between arching that back up really nice and high, kind of pinching those shoulders and hips together, and then let it relax, dipping that lower back down, kind of poking that butt out back behind you and arching that chest up in front towards the wall in front of you, and then pull that back right up again, squeezing those shoulders and hips together. Just keep alternating back and forth, trying to get as much range of motion in both directions as you can. Just make sure you're not pushing past that range of motion that's comfortable. All right, let's go ahead and move on to a Cobra Stretch. So lay flat down in your stomach. Those hands come out next to the base of your rib cage. Press into the palm of your hand, arching that chest up as high as is comfortable. Really arching it, trying to push that range of motion. Again, only go as far as is comfortable, but trying to get a good stretch all the way down through the front of that torso, through those abs. Now just keep those lungs open, breathing normally, constantly keeping that stretch going. The longer you hold this, the more that stretch is going to start to release and the more range of motion you'll be able to get out of it. So just keep going. We've got a few more seconds to go. And go ahead and let that relax. We're going to move on to our next exercise, which is a deep glute stretch. Let's go and roll you over into your back. You're going to put that left leg over on top of your right, grab behind that right thigh, squeezing that right leg in as close as is comfortable. You're actually going to feel that stretch in your left hip and that left glute. So even though you're grabbing hold of that right leg, you're going to feel it in your left side. So just pull it in as close as is comfortable. You're going to feel maybe a little bit into your lower back as well. Just hold it there wherever is comfortable. If you want to get a little extra stretch on your hamstring of that right leg, you can flex that right leg out straight as well. But otherwise, just keep that knee bent, focusing on that left hip. And go ahead and let it relax. Switch sides. That right leg comes over top of that left. Grab behind that left thigh. Squeeze it in. Again, you're going to feel this in your right hip this time rather than the leg you're holding on to. Just pull it in as close as is comfortable. Really trying to work that range of motion. Again, like I said, you're going to feel this primarily in your right glute, but you might feel it in that lower back as well. Keep those lungs open, breathing normally. You have just a few seconds left. And let it relax. So let's go and move on to our next one, which is going to be a torso twist. So you're going to lay that right leg over to the left, keeping those shoulders on the ground as much as you can, rotating those hips as much as possible off to the side, trying to get a really good rotation through that torso, feeling all those muscles, those obliques on the left and right side, and through that lower back, all stretch out. Just keep holding that position, rotating those hips as much as possible. Again, the main thing you want to focus on is trying to keep those shoulders flat against the ground. Now we're almost done, just a little bit longer. And go ahead and switch sides. Bring that left knee off to the right. Again, keeping those shoulders flat against the ground, rotating those hips off to the right as much as you possibly can. Feeling that stretch through your abdominal muscles, your obliques, your lower back, basically everything through that core should feel a little bit of a stretch in this. Now again, keep those lungs open, breathing normally. You've got just a little bit longer to go. Just keep holding that stretch, rotating those hips as much as you can. And just a couple seconds left. And let it relax. Let's go ahead and move on to our last stretch, the full body stretch, laying on your back. Press those arms out over your head. Stretch those arms and legs in opposite directions, arching that back up really nice and high as you stretch them out. Trying to keep those lungs open, but same time getting a really good stretch. Let it release for just a second, and then do it again. Press those hands and feet in opposite directions, arch that back up really nice and high. Get a good stretch to that torso, those arms, those legs. And let it release. We're going to do it one more time. Inhale, stretch them out. Putting those hands and feet in opposite directions. And let it relax. All right, very good job. That is our last stretch, which means this workout is complete. You just finished Fitness Blender's light toning and flexibility workout.